Hello, everybody. Ciao a tutti. Today I have the great honor of interviewing at radio station WSRO 650 on the AM radio dial, the great icon of the radio field, Pearl Oliva. Good morning, Pearl.
Oh, good morning and good afternoon and good evening. Just ciao, everybody.
Thank you very much for being with us, Pearl. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for asking me. It's an important question after you reach a certain point in life. Everything is fine, thank you.
So the reason why we're here today is to have a retrospective conversation about your personal background, but above all about the history of the Guido Oliva Italian American program that is this year in its 63rd year as a Metro West radio tradition, right?
Correct, absolutely correct.
Okay.
It was founded in 1950 by my father, Guido Oliva.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So we know that your father, Guido Oliva, started the program in 1950. So my question was, how did it start and why has been selected to do this program?
Well, Daddy was well known in Italo-American circles because of his activities. He was for many years the venerable. Instead of using the term president, which is current now with the Sons of Italy organization, they would call the president the venerable. And now they're the presidents of the various lodges. And he used to organize their parade. I remember one time they had a tame lion because the lion is the mascot of the Order of Sons of Italy in America. And I remember Daddy was marching in the parade, at the head of the parade, with the lion, with the chain, of course, and top hat, white tie, tails. It was a very formal thing. And he was an MC, and he also happened to be a charter member of the Civic League Players, and that's the amateur actors and actors who did little theater in Framingham.
So this is the reason why the three founders of the Framingham radio decided to ask him to initiate this program. So which was the aim of this program? Like basically, which was the idea behind this Italian American program?
Nothing very esoteric, just to keep alive the Italian culture and mainly to entertain the Italian listeners. In those days, 1950, there was a strong Italian presence in the town of Framingham. And, of course, Italians like music. Guido d'Arezzo invented music in the sense that he was the first person who assigned the terms do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. And that was, music took off after that, music as we know it. Anyway, he wanted to keep that particular tradition alive, so the people who immigrated to this country would not be so lonely.
They could have some sort of contact with their culture and their patria lontana. How do you translate patria lontana?
A faraway homeland. Yeah, because it was far away in those days. But also beauty. Italian music is very beautiful. The Italian language is one of the most beautiful languages in the world. And this is not merely my opinion. I agree with the linguists who have proclaimed that the Italian language is one of the most beautiful in the world, and of course the Italian music. And just to fill the air with beauty, too. So for 1 hour, every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m., while the Italians were sitting down to dinner, they could hear La voce della patria lontana.
La voce della patria lontana. So would you like to give us some information about your family? So why your dad and your mom moved to the United States? What brought them to the United States?
Well, Babbo, Daddy, was born in the city of Fano, provincia di Pesaro, in the province of Le Marche. He was Marchigiano. And Fano is a seaport, essentially, and the main industry in Fano is the fishing industry. And all the economy of the town was wrapped up in the fishing industry. If they had a good season, everybody else had a good season. But if they had a bad season, then another bad season, and then another bad season, they were in dire difficulties. So this is what happened at that era in Fano, the turn of the century, from the 18th century, 19th century to the 20th century. And my grandfather, Giuseppe Oliva, a Fanese, had a half interest in a shoe manufacturing business. And, you know, after 3 bad seasons, they were in dire straits too. So he decided to come to America and scout it out. In the meantime, his my grandmother, Teresa Sayeri, came down with typhoid fever, and the Nono's partner just took off with anything. It wasn't a big company, just 18 or 20 employees at most. But, you know, it kept the family going. And then, you know, when they were deserted, so they decided to immigrate here to the United States. And this is what they did. My daddy, Guido Oliva, was 6 years old. So he there was something phenomenal about this because he went to school in the United States. You know, 6 years old. I think the cutoff date for is 13 years old. After 13, you have a slight accent to your speech in any language. And but he started school at 6. He was very bright. He got 2 double promotions. And but the thing that was very unusual, he kept his Italian, I don't know.
Attitude?
Yeah.
Character?
La cadenza.
So he's when talking, like you could see, you could easily say he was not from here. He was not from
He
here.
was an Italian little child, you know, brought up. In the meantime, he spoke English perfectly at the same time, which is very unusual. Anyway, he in 1950, he was approached by the 3 ex-servicemen who started radio in Framingham, and they, because of the demographics, they decided to include, you know, the Italian community too, and present an Italian hour. And they had heard about Daddy, active in, you know, Italian-American circles. And, of course, he leaped at the chance because he was, you know, it's a form of show business, right? And he liked the acting. As I mentioned, he was a charter member of the Civic League Players. And it took off. You know, the program took off. Everybody. We had 98% of the listening audience between 1 and 2 p.m. at that time.
That's pretty impressive.
Yes, it is pretty impressive, and it was a lot of fun. Also, we had a program Saturday morning, and then he moved on to, I think, Marlborough or Milford. My memory doesn't serve me. And then we had an hour also in Worcester. And so we had about 1, 2, 3 programs going at the same time. Gradually, we just downsized to 2, one on Sunday in Framingham and one on Sunday earlier in Worcester.
But I'm pretty sure that the audience was not just in the Metro West area. It was just starting like being also in other states in New England where other Italian communities were established, right?
Yes, they used to pick up the signal. Mr. Garino, who owned Garino's record company down in downtown Framingham, used to drive to the Cape, to Dennis. He said, once we reached that little bridge over Route 6, we lost the transmission. But up to nearly Dennis, we reached that area on their signal. Of course, then the radio expanded, the signal power increased, and eventually we went all over the area.
So when your father initiated the program, what was his idea, how he organized the program?
Very simple formula. We had sponsors, and it was really very straightforward. He kept away from anything controversial. There was no politics involved, just to entertain the public, the listening audience, and to inform, too. about cultural things, cultural activities, whatever was going on in the Italo-American community. We'd read the commercial announcements, then make the dedications, happy birthday, happy anniversary, if somebody has passed on, in memory of. Just focus on the listening audience and playing the appropriate songs.
So the language of the show was Italian, or
Yes. Almost exclusively. And that has changed, of course. Now I broadcast in both Italian and English. The first part of the hour now is, in fact, we often broadcast from right from this studio where you and I are sitting this morning. The first part of the hour is mostly Italian, and then the second part of the hour is mostly English.
in English?
Yeah, with Italian interspersed every once in a while.
And your dad started to bring you to the radio with him?
Oh, the first day, yeah, absolutely the first day, because I would hand him the discs, and he allowed me to announce the songs, and gradually he'd give me the commercials to read, and which was a good preparation, because unfortunately we lost Daddy in 1972, and I was forced to take over the whole program myself. I produced it, I directed it, I broadcast it. All those details were
Before
responsibility.
talking about that and the program, would you like to give us some information about your background? Which was your first language? How was your education? What did you do for work apart from the radio? Would you like to give us some, background about you?
Okay, can we finish up about Daddy too? Some of his.
Oh, of course. You have something more to say? Yes.
Oh yes, the way he and my mother met, I think it's very romantic. Daddy was a dancer in his spare time. He was a very good dancer. He taught me how to dance. And he used to enter contests with various partners, young women, in Framingham. And almost inevitably, he would win the loving cup. They gave loving cups. And Daddy, being a perfect gentleman, always offered it to his dancing partner, of course. And so we don't have any trophies that Daddy won. It's not like when you ski, you win a trophy, and you can fill your book shelves with all your trophies. There is a single trophy left. But so one day, he had come home late, and in the meantime, I'll back up. My mother had arrived here in the United States to visit a cousin just for about 2 years. And then she was going to be returned to Italy, where she had her mother and her 2 brothers and so forth, and all the relatives. And so she stayed with her cousin, who was established in Framingham. And on Sundays, they used to walk by Farm Pond. There were all kinds of entertainments there. And so they were strolling, and coming in the opposite direction was my Aunt Mary. But she wasn't my aunt then. She was my father's sister, and she had a little baby at that time, and they were strolling. They stopped. They talked. My mother's cousin said, this is my cousin recently arrived from Italy. And she said, oh, my mother would love to meet her. Why don't you come up for a coffee? So the next Sunday they met, and they went up for coffee. And that's a Sunday that Daddy had slept late. This was 2 o'clock in the afternoon by the time they got there. And so he came and sat with his sister. And, Daddy was very affectionate and demonstrative, and he put his arm around his sister's shoulder, and they were talking. And my mother ignored him because she thought he was that lady's husband. Anyway, Daddy told me that the first time he saw her, he said, that's the girl I'm going to marry. And I said, why, Daddy? What was it about her that, sort of swept you off your feet? And he said, she was as beautiful as Venus de Milo.
This is very romantic.
I think it is. I think it is too. And he used to organize beauty pageants, and my mother entered one. They entered my mother in one, and my mother won the prize because she was a very beautiful young woman, and Daddy suggested that maybe she decline the prize because he had organized this pageant, and somebody might think, oh, the guy who organized it, naturally his girl is going to win. So to avoid any kind of
Controversy or
exactly, she never got a prize, but everybody knew she had won the beauty contest because she was so beautiful. But when Daddy told me that she was as beautiful as Venus de Milo, I burst into tears. I was smiling, talking, all of a sudden I burst into tears. I was so struck by that comment. And, I operated at a very high level of emotional feelings. And so you want to know a little bit about me now?
so you were all a single child, or you had?
No, I had a sister who was born in Framingham. The Framingham, it was called the Union Hospital, and my mother contracted scarlet fever, and they quarantined the whole hospital. So my sister Lily was 40 days old when she got home. The nurses had put a little ribbon in her hair and everything. And Mama said, oh my, that was such a bad experience. The next baby is going to be born at home. And I was born at home at 10 Hay Street, the house of Salvatore and Pavia, the Pavia house on Hay Street. They lived at number 8, and we had an apartment at number 10 Hay Street. So to me, that seemed, as a child, it seemed so bizarre. It felt as though my parents were pioneers and I was born in the prairie, I wasn't born in a hospital. I was born in a house. And the doctor who delivered me, there was only one doctor for my sister. There were 3 doctors because it was my mother's first pregnancy, and it was a difficult one. And so it was just Dr. McCann. He and Daddy were playing cards, waiting for me to be born. And
Playing cards?
yeah, they were great card players, and that's the way they amused themselves. And waiting for the baby to come, and I finally came. My mother said that both of us were born by 3 o'clock in the morning. We had been born, so it was the middle of the night, so to speak. And I attended Framingham schools as did my sister, and also I wanted to be an actress.
You wanted to be an actress?
Oh,
You had this
yes.
passion?
Yeah, I did. And I heard, in this way, my sister told me about this school. She's been a big influence in my life, and I have a lot to thank her for. There were announcements. In those days, they had merit scholarships. You went in, you took an exam. I guess they based it on IQ or something like that, something not on financial needs, and they called them merit scholarships. And there was an announcement, and I mentioned it at home, about an exam that's going to be held. And the school was Kathleen Dell School, no longer operating. And they had a radio dramatic secretarial course. And I said, I'll try for a scholarship there. And I was lucky enough to be awarded. I went in for the test, and I was awarded the scholarship. And so that it was a toss-up between that and going to Wellesley College. The tuition was the same, $500 a year. Can you
More or less like now, right?
Yeah, a lot like now. It's, what is it, $500 a week or a minute or something, or an hour?
I'm not sure, but
Oh,
it's
gosh.
quite expensive.
Yeah, it's quite expensive. So Wellesley lost out, and Kathleen Dell got me. But I learned about preparing for radio programs. Isn't that something? This is
It's funny because you didn't know that you would have used that
Yeah,
much.
I graduated in '48. It was a 2-year school, and he was asked to start the program in 1950.
So right after that.
Right after that, so I was fresh from school. I prepared his scripts. I knew how to do all that stuff.
So you were writing in the scripts for your dad's programs. That's how you
I
used
was
to help
writing
him.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, he was doing the writing in Italian, and he would dictate to me, and I wrote up the script. So everything was ready for him, and I knew how to arrange the records. And I went with him for the first program, and I was with him always, unless, I was going to Italy. Later on, I would take trips to Italy because I also organized trips to Italy and escorted trips to Italy. In all, I think I've made about 85 trips.
85 trips only to Italy.
Yeah, well, in the rest of Europe too. Oh, and I've gone to Japan. Let's say 85 trips to Italy. And
That's
discovering
a
the
lot.
relatives. Oh, what a pleasure. Oh, another thing about the music. The first Italian song I learned was Violino Zicano. And
Which song is that?
that's by Maestro Cesare Andrea Bixio.
You want to tell us a little bit about this Cesare Andrea Bixio? Because I think it's a great personality.
Oh, yes. He is credited with inventing the Italian popular songs because, according to my understanding, all the songs that were from Italy were Neapolitan. And he sort of made them they became international, but national. So they were devoid of that regionalism or the provincialism. The Italian popular songs sort of grew into all regions, not strictly Naples and the Neapolitan music. So anyway, he taught me that song. And then years later, when I went to Italy, and we visited his Daddy's first cousins. By then, she was a widow. He lost his first cousin, who was Alvaro Calcagnini, at a very young age. Anyway, she introduced me to her sister, and her sister's husband was Maestro Cesare Andrea Bixio, and among his canon of works was Violino Zicano. I can't tell you the feeling I was a little kid there learning Violino Zicano, and here was the creative genius who had created that beautiful music. He wrote Mamma, Parlami d'amore Mariù, La strada nel bosco, so many beautiful, beautiful songs.
And he ended up being a member of your family.
Yes. But I always was very timid. I could never call him Zio Cesare. I always addressed him as Maestro. And when I told Mary, his wife, I said, sono in soggezione, and she replied, Anch'io. His genius, he could have been an architect. He designed so many beautiful houses. Incredible. And of course, he had his own ideas. And he sort of influenced me because he collected works of art. And I said, Maestro, what prompts you? He says, when I see something beautiful, I buy it. And of course, he had the means because he was like the Cole Porter of Italy. I mean, Bixio. And he had a partner who was his lyricist for most of the time, and his name was Cherubino, Bixio Cherubino. That was his name, and it often get confused. Anyway, he wrote the song Vivere, and he wrote for the movies. Mamma was a song he wrote for the movies, and Vivere is a song he wrote for the movies. And the lyricists somehow or another missed the appointment, so the maestro was constrained to write the words. So the Vivere has words and music by Chia Pixio, Cesare Andrea Pixio. And he was such a fine man. He reminded me a lot of my father, and he looked like my father too. Strange thing. And you know, I'm not a coffee drinker, but we were at his one of his summer homes at Rocca di Papa outside Rome, I Castelli, that area, and he brought over to me. He added some. We were under the outdoors, and he put some sugar in some espresso and got up and handed it to me.
So you had to drink that.
Yeah, and it wasn't bad, you know.
Only because he prepared that for you, right?
Yes, it was wonderful. I'll never forget that cup of espresso. It was just fantastic. And of course, he was creative, so creative. And he made 3 villas there. One was his own. And when I went there, they put me up in a little villetta they called Giulietta because it had a balcony all around it. And he had picked everything, you know, the fixtures, everything, the furniture, everything. Exquisite taste. And then,
So every time that you used to go to Italy, you were like meeting him and had the chance to spend time with him.
oh yes, yeah. With the kids, they had 3 sons. Carlo, who passed on. Carlo Bixio is the chap who produced un medico in famiglia,
Oh.
and there are other hits too, and that he produced that are being watched now. And then there's Andrea, and he's a professore, and then there's Franco, and he's, you know, with the record business. They have a record business there, you know, involved in music too. So very talented young man. And I remember when I first came, Carlo and I used to take off, you know, and visit with his friends. And then he sort of went out of the picture. He had different interests in. By that time, Andrea was a little bit older, so he and I would go out. And then he was off, and then Franco. So the 3 young cousins, I was able to interact with them socially and meet their friends, and it was absolutely fantastic.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you used to organize these trips? It was one of your 3 jobs, right?
Oh yes. Well, eventually I went. I left secretarial work, and I went into. I went back to college. And this is something too. My sister influenced me. She said. She had children, and she said, you know, maybe I should start a nursery school. But we have to have a person with a degree. You know, when you have a daycare center, but somebody involved has to have a degree, or that was the prevalent condition at that time. I don't know if they have different rules now. And she said, so you go to school, you get the degree. So I went to. I was studying at BC because there were Sister Josephina at the time, I had read in the pilot, was teaching the Montessori method. And Maria Montessori, not only was she a Marchigiana, I think she was from Pesaro, and a genius educator. There were little children who were mentally challenged at that time, and her lessons were so structured that they functioned perfectly. And of course the thought came to other people, if she can do this kind of work with mentally challenged children, who knows what she can do with gifted children. And so, and that's what happened. And eventually Montessori schools are all over the place now. And so anyway, I was going to take a course at BC, and I'll remember this. I'll never forget this. The secretary said, you know, if you sign up for the full evening program, you can take a test for a scholarship. Oh boy, you know, free tuition. By that time it was $600, you know, to take the evening course. So I signed up, and I said, I'm acing this. I'm going to get, a 6-year scholarship. And I didn't. I got a 1-year scholarship. But even that was the appropriate action for that time in my life. Because then I switched to, after I had completed that year, I switched to Framingham State. And you've studied.
I studied at Framingham State.
Yes. And I graduated from Framingham State in 1996, and I majored in English, minored in history, and secondary education. And I went to teach at North High School, or there was junior high school. They called them junior high schools at that time. And then I switched. I did my student teaching at North High School, and then I switched to the high school. And then in 1974, they decided to add Italian to the curriculum. And I was the logical choice because they, the people in charge knew about my radio work. By 1964, I had been doing it 14 years. And I also had been teaching Italian in the Framingham Adult Evening School. But there was one hitch. I was not certified. So I took courses, and I studied in Italy, and I studied.
Where did you study in Italy?
I studied, through the University of Pennsylvania. I studied in Italy. But eventually I was very lucky. I received a Fulbright scholarship. So I studied in Perugia.
For how long?
Oh, just a summer course. And then I was also lucky because I had applied for another one, but I didn't hear from the Fulbright organization. In the meantime, I made plans to study at Oxford University in England. And then I got a call. Pearl, the Fulbright Commission has chosen you again. And I had to turn it down, unfortunately.
So how did you, how were you able to combine these 3 jobs that you have, these teacher jobs, this trip organizer job, and the radio station?
And teaching at night and getting my master's at night.
And getting your master's, yeah. How could you do all that?
Well, you get up, you're on the road at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you come home about 10 at night, and you have an awful lot of support. My parents, my mother, and a friend, a very good friend, Helen Parker. She would prepare my evening sandwiches. I'd stop there after school. I went my way to BC, and then from BC I came back to teach the evening schools. And then I taught 4 nights a week, and 2.
What did you used to teach?
I beg your pardon?
What was the subject you were teaching?
At that time, until 1974, I was teaching English. And then I switched to Italian, and I had to get certified, so I would study. I would mostly at Harvard Extension, but I did have a summer session at Harvard itself, And I didn't know where to begin, and the instructor, Dr. Paolo Valesia from the University of Bologna, I conferred. He was the instructor, and I conferred with him, and I said, I was born, I was reared bilingual, and I do this and this and this. Where do I start? He said, you start with Italian 1. Of course, that brought a smile on my face, because that it was very easy for me. But I followed the instructor's directions to the letter. And
how long have you been teaching for?
I started teaching in 1966, and I taught till 1994. I retired in 1994.
So now a question that is not related to this. So during your trips to Italy, have you ever thought about moving back or not?
Well, I did at one time. And I had 2 trips to Italy. There was a brief hiatus, so I came home and prepared to, escort the second trip to Italy. And I was invited to my friend's home in Natick for barbecue, you know, cookout we used to call them. It was a lazy Sunday, sunny, wonderful afternoon, and I could hear the drone of American voices. And I said, I just had this feeling. I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson who wrote, "This is my home, my native land." And I knew that I could. I don't think I could leave it for any inducement. I had to, you know, I could travel, but I had to come back home to the United States.
Okay, so we know that from 1972 you started having the program, and
yes, yeah.
all for
Yeah,
you.
He died unexpectedly. He had had a wonderful medical report that previous Friday, gone to the cemetery on May 30th. And May 31st, he just dropped dead in the garden. Very, very shocking, very traumatic. Devastating, really. And I still weep, you know. As I mentioned, I'm a very emotional person, and the tears are always close to the surface, you know, when it gets too hard.
So how did you do, like, to start the program all on your own? Did you decide to go out with the same formula? You decided to change it?
No, the formula was the same. You know, we made the dedications. Nothing very innovative. I think the primary draw of the program is the music. People want to hear the music. All that banter and chatting is fine. And through the years, we've had guests. We interviewed stars, Sergio Franchi, Rita Pavone, all kinds of.
I heard some interviews also to, like, persons, people such as Albano. You have an interview with Albano.
Oh, yes.
You have an interview with Susanna Agnelli. How did you, like? How were you able to get all these interviews with these people?
Well, through the contacts, the organizations who were sponsoring. I would be in touch with those. Now, I'd explain that, you know, we had the Italian American program, the Guido Oliva Italian American program after 1972, to honor my father. And my father had been very active in the community too. He had founded a citizens club to teach the Italian immigrants English. And then when they were ready to become citizens, he would take days off from work and drive them to Boston so they could take their exam and become American citizens. And of course, he had prepared them as far as the English language was concerned and the information that was required of them. And he never took one penny from anybody. That's the way he was. He was a very honorable person. And he trained young men, you know, boxers. He trained, Bill Pleshaw was our postmaster, and he was one of his boys. And my mother used to sew up their boxing trunks for them. And Lou Vericchione had an important role in Italy post-war reconstruction. And he was one of Daddy's boys. And of course, they had their own names and, you know, fighting.
Nicknames.
Yeah, nicknames. Daddy also became a referee. He was an auctioneer. This is an interesting story because at the end of Prohibition, this is in the early 30s, we had an Italian friend who was not a citizen, and he said, he was called Jack Oliva. And he said, "Jack, you know, you're an American citizen. I'd like to start a package store. And why don't you take out the license because you're a citizen, and I'll put up all the merchandise, and we'll split 50-50. And Daddy declined. This is a very profitable business, you know, liquor stores. Daddy declined because he didn't want the name of Oliva associated with the sale of intoxicating beverages. I mean, you know, he was just such a fine person. He had a chance to become very affluent, but
He said no.
He said no, because it was not part of his code of honor. That's the type of person he was. He was just such a splendid person. And of course, one of my aims is to keep the program going in his name, to honor him in all the fineness in the world through him, because he was such a fine person. And of course, Italian.
So the next thing you're going to talk about is your program, like when you started having the program and organizing the program on your own.
Yeah. We can take a little pause, right?
Okay, yes, take a little pause. Hello everybody, ciao a tutti. Here we are again with Pearl Oliva. We are at their family house. Today we have the honor to go on with a little bit of history of her family, and we're gonna have some photos that she's gonna explain us about her family, her dad, the prizes that she won. But today we also have the honor of being with a special guest. So Pearl, would you like to introduce our guest?
Oh, I certainly would. It's such a great pleasure to introduce the general manager of radio station WSRO, Yulma Paichal.
Hello. Hi, Ilma. How are you today?
I'm very well, Laura, and I'm very well, Pearl. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here with you today.
Well, we are very honored to have you, because you're a very busy lady. And just the fact that you were able to take a few moments away from your schedule and join us here, it's such a great pleasure. And, I think that Laurie has a question to ask.
Yes, so the reason why Ilma is with us today is because she's the one that had the great idea of initiating this project with Pearl, which aim is to preserve the Italian culture, the history of the program, so that also the future generation may have the chance to see what Pearl has done during these 63 years, before with her dad and now on her own. So we're gonna ask Ilma, what bring you to this idea? How did you came up with this idea of this project?
Laura, that's a very good question, and I think you answered right there. I am so proud of Pearl and her father for doing this work for so many years. And I'm sure the community in general was benefited by it. The Italian community is special. And I have just a great honor to have Pearl in the station. And I feel that it's such a privilege that I would love to share with everyone. I'm curious. I want to know more. How did that start? And how do you have a commitment for so many years, and do it so much love and passion the way she does? I want to be able to do that as well. So I want to learn for the one who knows best is how to preserve a culture, how to preserve a relationship and a communication, doing such a graceful way. And that's what I think that was the main reason, is to share this this joy that we have with the world. And we're so happy that you were able to come and do that with us. And for you being a young Italian and have the experience of going to school in this country, and pride, and so proud of your culture, and bring that to us. I think it was such a great combination. I couldn't miss that for the world.
Thank you very much. So actually we talked about that yesterday in the first part of our interview with Pearl, but we're going to talk about that later on, when Pearl is going to explain us how was and how has been during all these years, leading the show, and what was the aim of her show, where she's going to tell us what she changed, if she changed anything, what was the purpose of her show, and how she could, as you said, continue with all this passion and great music. That's the main ingredient of our show. So yeah, we're gonna go on later off. So thank you very much, our special guest Ilma, for being with us. Thank you very much, Pearl. And we're gonna take a little bit of pause and be with you in a little bit. Thank you.
Here we are in the next to the entrance, the hall entrance door. And this is a picture on porcelain of Daddy, of Guido Oliva, in his younger days, of course. And this is the type of picture that they put on the tombstones in Italy, actually. And after my father passed on, our friends had that made up. But instead of putting it on the gravestone where he lies, we put it on, this is an Italian frame, it's pewter, and this is red velvet. And here he is at the entrance guarding our house, along with, of course, Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit. And he's also welcoming everybody who comes to visit. Italians are very hospitable, and they welcome, strangers, and he was a wonderful host. And we can move down the hall, and you've already seen my mother's portrait. Oh, we didn't focus on that.
No, we have to do that today.
Okay, well, we'll do that. In his portrait, painted by my sister.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, well, here's my mother in her later years. Of course, Daddy had passed on. This was done for St. Tarcisius when they were making like a collection of all the parishioners, a photographic collection. And it's my mother and I, because we're members of St. Tarcisius Parish. To make the family complete at the time, we would had to include my sister Lillian, of course, because my parents had the two daughters, Lillian and Pearl. But as it happened, it was part of the St. Tarcisius collection. And this, they made these things just for the parishioners. And this, right here, this is Maestro Bixio, right here, as a young man. And this is his wife. This is Mariu, Parlami d'amore Mariu. This is Eternamente Tu. That's one of the songs, see? From Bixio. That's his record company. And this is made by Cesare Andrea Bixio. And this other stuff, let me just close the store a minute, because it's unsightly. Of course, this is Mother Teresa and Padre Pio. I had the privilege of being face to face with Padre Pio. And this little, one of the guys in the hotel was a painter, and he was doing his, he had a little show, so I bought that. I picked it up and to take it here. And these are some of the awards that I have been fortunate enough to receive. And this is the one from the Pirandello Society. And this, of course, was last year when the governor came later on that year, and WSRO got an increase in power, and it was just wonderful. And okay, did we focus on my mother's portrait and my father's portrait?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Those were painted by my sister, Lillian Travellini. She's an accomplished artist. And you pick up some of the other...
Yes, I picked out yesterday.
Oh, yes. Okay, and did you get the wall with the an example of some of the various art forms?
We can
Yeah,
go there.
yeah. This is these two pastels are done by my sister, and she did this too. That's one of her latest works. This is our friend Irene Day, and she was we grew up on Cedar Street, and she lived across the street where the St. Tarcisius Rectory is right now. And she was involved in painting China. She passed on May 25th of 2013. Now, this is a little sample of some of the artworks. This is a curio cabinet that I had sent over from Sorrento. And you see some of the Capo di Monte figurines. They're all from Italy. They're beautiful little things. And this is... Columbine. This is from Venice. They have the the Carnival of Venice. She's masked. Too bad Harlequin. He was out of Harlequin. This is from the Cameo Factory near Naples, and this is a German. That's a Wagner, and so is that. And that little one there, that's from San Marco, and it is St. Mark, and they have the he's incised in gold. Now that one is Byzantine mosaic, which is little pieces of glass, but the gold is like a sandwich, a layer of glass, gold leaf, and then another layer of glass. And of course that's that one, that the St. Mark is also from Venice. He's the patron saint of Venice. This fan was done, I had the shadow, put in a shadow box in Florence. And that's the way they do fans. It's on pale green silk in the background. And over in that corner, there's they etch on silk too, so on silver. That's a Salvador Dali, but it's a signed litho. But he was Spanish.
Here we are again with Pearl Oliva. I have one more question for you before I want to thank you very much for this interview, for this time you have spent with me talking about your father's program, your personal life, and all the interesting anecdotes you told us. So my last question is, why do you think it's so important to preserve the culture of a specific community, even if you're far away from a specific country?
Well, it's part of our history on a very, very small scale, you know. It's nothing earth-shattering, but it is a definite part of the whole cultural history of Framingham and Metro West, you could say, with all the people coming into our countries. You know, it seems as though each ethnic group has his time, and then these groups get assimilated into the culture. Now there's a very strong Brazilian presence in Framingham, and the Italian presence is diminished. And what happens if we don't have something on record? You see, the oral tradition, sometimes it's not accurate. This is accurate. It's current. It's part of my life. It happened, and I'm very truthful about things. I don't have that kind of creative imagination to make up stories that are not true. So this is an essential part for the Italian presence in Framingham. And I think that anybody who has Italian roots or is interested in Italian roots on a small scale, on a local scale, would be interested in knowing, well, what was it like in those days? You know, we take the present for granted unless we have a particular interest in the past. I happen to have a particular interest in the past. I'm interested in history, and right now the present is part of the future too. At this moment, with you and me and our wonderful photographer Eduardo, who is so kind and so professional. And I thank you, both Laurie and I thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Yes. We'll have to put a picture of him.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, so they can see a handsome young man here. Anyway, basically you follow, you get the idea. Why do you think it's important? Obviously you do. You think it's an important part.
Because the United States is the country where you can find the greatest combination of cultures. It's the most tolerant country of the world. It is important that every community maintains its identity. Although they just live together as one country, they have their own language, they have their own tradition, their own history, and it's important that all this is not going to be, lost over time.
Yes, that's the thing. To preserve it for future generations.
That's the most important thing, I think. Well, Pearl, thank you very much for sharing with us all this information, and I will see you soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, Laura, and, well, okay. That will be for another time. I hope you come back
Oh, yeah.
to Framingham.
You can say that to me. It's more personal. We don't have to include this in the video.
Okay.
Can you hold the mic for me?
Sure.
If you want to leave a message, I would like you you know, leave a message, or you know, for somebody who wants to follow your dream to be like you know, like a, be on a job for you know, for all those years.
Oh, yeah. You let me know when you want me to speak. Okay. You know, it takes a lot of constancy and dedication to stick with something. Right now it's been 63 years. But I'm motivated by the fact that I was very impressed with my father as a fine human being, a fine representative of the Italian culture, the Italian contribution here. And he did a lot to unify, so that in his own special way, nothing flamboyant, nothing that would hit the newspapers or make headlines. Well, you know, they didn't have TV in those days, not for popular use anyway. And I think he was an exceptional person, and he's, I would say, typical of Italians. They're fine people. There are fine people all over the world, but he happens to be from that particular culture, and that's what we're focused on, and that's part of the American scene, the melting pot, of course. And you know, he had that enthusiasm. You need enthusiasm. He was very enthusiastic about life, about doing good things, and making a positive contribution to society. Always contributing, and never extracting, you know, but always contributing. And of course, the joie de vivre, as the French say, la gioia di vivere. And he was an exceptional person, and I think a perfect example of everything that's good and fine about Italians. And I hope that the program goes on and becomes a tradition. There's, I know we have a friend in Mondo Catania who expressed the desire to carry on the Guido Oliva Italian program. And of course, his input would be something else. And you know, I hope that you come back and maybe establish yourself here so you can work in tandem with Mondo, because you're authentic too. You're right from Italy, and you have that appreciation for American culture. You've studied here. You spent 2 semesters here studying at Framingham State University. You have the picture of both worlds, and I think you have assimilated them both. And that's the way, you know, to perpetuate this tradition, because it's enriching, and that's important for our culture. We need good things in our everyday life, and I think that the Guido Oliva Italian program is a good thing because it stems from a good person whose intentions were utterly upright, and to add, not to subtract. And that's it at the moment. We'll try to think of something else to add, to embellish maybe. Thank you so much for taking the time and collaborating.
Thank you, Pearl.
All'italiana.
All'italiana.
Now, all you who are listening, you have to have an Italian meal tonight of your choice, and a brindisi, a little toast, and to go on and explore the Italian culture. I think you'll love it, if you haven't already done so. Ciao for now.
Ciao.